As darkness falls on a cold February day in 2014, regulars to a Gloucester hairdresser's watch helplessly as a popular young woman is brutally stabbed to death in front of them.
He executes her publicly.
Hollie Gazzard had found her dream job, but her happiness at work masked a dark taboo at home. For months, she'd been trying to escape her violent, abusive boyfriend, Asher Maslin. Finally, she'd left him, but she paid for it with her life.
Those words are the worst a father could hear, i.e. your daughter has been killed.
Britain's Darkest Taboos reveals the shocking true stories behind the most horrific acts of familial crime, including murder.
He stood up and licked the blood off the knife and he spat down her body.
Torture.
People call him an animal, but he's not an animal. An animal wouldn't do that to another animal.
And abuse.
I probably should have died, and I tell you what, I wish I had.
Gloucester, Tuesday, February the 18th, 2014. It's a day like any other. But this was to be no ordinary day. As everyone in the city goes about their business, there's a killer in their midst. And he's plotting a deadly act of violence. These CCTV images show Asher Maslin calmly buying a knife and setting off on his way to murder.
It's Hollie.
Oh, that.
Lovely.
Hollie Gazzard is born on the 24th of July 1993, the second daughter to loving parents Mandy and Nick Gazzard.
Hollie was, she was a month early, she was a month premature. She was very tiny when she was born, she was only just over 5 pounds. So because she was a month early, we weren't expecting her that early. I remember going out and buying clothes. They were doll's clothes at the time, just so that she had something which fitted her. She was very small.
Hollie has an older sister, and the two girls quickly form a strong bond.
It was fun growing up with Hollie. She had so much energy, and she was always very playful and just always on the go. You couldn't keep up with her. She darted here, there, and everywhere.
As a teenager, she changed. She became very fashion conscious, very conscious about herself, her hair, her makeup, the clothes she wore. She was very stylish as well. She had ginger hair, a lovely lock of ginger hair, which she used to look after. And actually, if you see lots of pictures of her now, she had loads of styles.
Hollie's hair earns her the nickname Ginge, and after leaving school, she follows her childhood dream and trains as a hairdresser.
When we were younger, we'd had those dolls that you could do hair with, but then I remember Hollie just cut all her doll's hair off.
She didn't realise that it didn't grow back, so that was a one-off.
So it wasn't always the best way to start, but she soon started playing with kind of people's hair, and ever since she was little, really. Hollie used to do my hair all the time. She used to practice kind of French plaits and do weird things with it. I couldn't probably leave the house like it necessarily, but she'd always try and do things.
In February 2013, as Hollie continues to chase her hairdressing dream, she meets 20-year-old Asher Maslin, a 6-foot security guard who towers over her.
When Hollie first met Asher, she met him in a nightclub, well, in a bar that she used to work at. I wasn't aware of the relationship straight away. She didn't tell me, I don't know why.
I didn't know Asher before Hollie started the relationship. So the first time I met him was when she brought him home one day, and she said, could she bring a friend home? We said, yes, that's not a problem. But when he came in, my wife said, oh, it's him. She knew him from school days where she worked, so I didn't know Asher, but Mandy did.
And Hollie's mother doesn't have a good impression of her daughter's new boyfriend.
She just said to me that at school he was a little bit rebellious, a little bit mouthy, a bit gobby. And she told him at the start, which was very brave, because Mandy doesn't usually say those type of things.
But why does Hollie ignore her mum's fears, even though the two are incredibly close? Psychologist Emma Kenny works with families in her clinic, and she's been looking into Hollie's relationship with Asher.
It's really difficult when a member of our family speaks out about a relationship we might be involved in and says to us, you know what, we're worried about the way that we feel your relationship is going. We have concerns about your partner. But when somebody challenges the choice that you have about your partner, you immediately feel that you have to defend yourself. This is the man that Hollie has chosen to be with. She doesn't want anybody pointing out things that she potentially knows better than anybody else.
Hollie's parents respect their daughter's choice and welcome her new boyfriend into their close-knit family home. It seems Maslin may have changed since his school days.
My first impressions of Asher was he was just a genuine guy. He just seemed quite normal and they seemed quite happy. We used to have a laugh with him. He was quite jokey, quite comical. And I saw that Hollie was happy, so I seemed happy.
He seemed quite charming when we first met him. Quite polite, quite respectful, treated Hollie nicely.
Things start well, but it doesn't take long for cracks to appear.
I heard them arguing on the phone quite a few times, but generally most couples do. But it got a bit more frequent, and she'd have so many missed calls on her phone, and it would be a constant texting, which I didn't think was quite normal.
Maslin is already showing signs that he wants to control Hollie. Then, 3 months into the relationship, Maslin's mask of respectability begins to slip.
When it was Mandy's birthday and we invited him, and we all 6 of us went out for a meal, and he turned up an hour late. He was drunk. He was abusive and disrespectful in the restaurant to Mandy, to me, to Hollie in particular, but also to the other staff in the restaurant. So Chloe's partner had to take him outside and tell him not to be disrespectful.
I was disgusted by it. I don't see how you can turn up to anyone, any other family or any friends or in that sort of state.
The family are now worried maybe Maslin hasn't changed after all. Criminal behaviour analyst Laura Richards advises police forces across the country on cases of domestic violence. She believes there are warning signs in this early behaviour.
Well, from early on, Hollie's mum had already come across Maslin at school and knew that he was an arrogant, she would call him arrogant and a gobby individual. But she ultimately gave him the benefit of the doubt, and maybe he had changed, and maybe he had sort of, matured a little bit. And unfortunately, what they found was when he was starting to date Hollie, he was turning up drunk. So very clearly, there are signs that he had not changed.
The very next day, Hollie moves to Watford. She's ambitious and keen to broaden her horizons, landing a job as a hairdresser on a cruise ship. Hollie's family hopes this may signal the end of her relationship with Maslin.
So we thought, well, relationship, it'll fizzle out because Hollie's going on her trip.
But their hopes are shattered. Maslin follows her.
Hollie went off to Watford to train with Steiner, and then about a week later we found out that Asher had followed her up there and he was staying in a hostel or some place like that, which we weren't too happy about, but obviously there's nothing we could have done about it.
I think it's really important to understand Hollie's psychology here. This is a young woman that we know is really bonded to her family and to her hometown. And even though she's branching out and forming a new life, anything that reminds her of that home experience is something that she's going to connect heavily with. So it makes sense that Asher becomes that identification. And that means that he has a position of strength in her world.
Hollie's a long way from home. Her family are becoming increasingly concerned, and it will be just weeks before her new boyfriend would turn into every parent's worst nightmare.
She went out with her friends at night. He would suddenly turn up at the end, drunk, being a little bit abusive to other people.
You don't threaten suicide on someone just to kind of bribe them to stay in a relationship.
May 2013, a 19-year-old Hollie Gazzard, a petite young hairdresser, has moved to London to chase her dream of hairdressing on board cruise ships. Her possessive boyfriend, Asher Maslin, has followed her, and her family are not happy.
It was a case of let her get on with being with her friends, her new friends, making new friends, and also making sure that she passed all the tests to go on the cruise ship, and didn't really want someone getting in the way of that and turning her attention away from it.
Hollie gets a job on a cruise liner, but after just a few weeks, she leaves. Her family suspects Maslin persuaded her to come home.
He didn't want her to go. I think he badgered her to come home. He was speaking to her on FaceTime, texting her, and I think she got pulled back by him in the end, which was a real shame, because I think if she'd have stayed on the cruise ship, she would have really enjoyed herself.
Hollie decides to stay in London and lands a job in a hair salon. Her family continue to visit. They're worried about Maslin's increasing control over her.
There was another instance when we went to visit Hollie in London, and she came out with us for the day for lunch, and whilst Hollie was getting a drink from the bar, her phone was going off and off and off. You could see the messages on the front, and one of the messages was, don't let them take you back, don't let them try and persuade to take you back, you need to stay here with me.
As soon as we see that Asher is actually texting Hollie, saying that he doesn't want her to be taken away from him, we immediately see that there is a line drawn. Asher sees Hollie as his property, but he also sees her family as a threat. It's as if they both can't have her. It has to be one or the other.
When we saw messages like that on her phone, we tried to get her to come back with us. We could take her there and then with all her stuff. She wouldn't have to worry about it. She'd have somewhere to live, but she didn't want to. Even you could take her away from all of it, she still didn't want to go.
August 2013, and the couple have been together now for 6 months. It's bank holiday weekend, and they decide to go to the Notting Hill Carnival.
At the carnival, Hollie told me that she'd taken one of Asher's cousins to the toilet. He didn't want to go on his own. And Asher couldn't find Hollie, so he was panicking, and Asher was ringing her and texting her, and when she got back, obviously it's a quite busy place, it takes a while to go there, he was just fuming and raged with anger.
In a fit of rage, Asher assaults Hollie, all because she didn't answer his calls.
She phoned me and said, "Dad, could you come and pick me up because I want to come home?" So I dropped everything from work and just went straight to London to pick her up.
Whilst we aren't absolutely sure about how his power over Hollie was escalating in London, what we do know is there was a very violent attack where Hollie's actually pushed to the floor at Notting Hill Carnival. The fact that he is now exerting physical control over Hollie suggests that she's going to become more and more aware that she's in danger. And this could very well be a real motivator in her deciding to move back to her family in Gloucester.
Hollie kept a lot from us. I think she wanted to protect us from it more than anything. Hollie always thinks that she can deal with things her way and on her own, so she tried to do as much of that as possible.
In September, Hollie is back in the safety of her family, and yet again, Maslin won't leave her alone.
Maslin wants to be with her all the time, but not just that, there's actually been escalation in terms of not just his controlling behaviour, but also physical incidents. Coercive control is one of them, so all the wanting to be with her continuously and sort of micromanaging her space, but also trying to ensure that he has sole monopoly of her time and her attention, always appearing, at certain places, and it just tells us that he's a very obsessive individual.
Despite the incident at Notting Hill, Hollie agrees to give the relationship another go.
Hollie's grown up in an incredibly close and connected family. Her understanding of relationships are that they are positive and that people can have great relationships with one another. She may see flaws in Asher's personality, but believe me, if there are positives within the relationship, she will exaggerate those and she will make up for his less positive qualities. And that's why she remains with him. She's giving him a chance. Hollie is the exact type of young woman who will give somebody a chance. And that's testament to her positive character traits.
When Asher and Hollie came back from London, back to Gloucester, because of what had happened, I didn't really want anything much to do with Asher. And actually, me and Hollie fell out for a little bit over that. She was quite adamant that she wanted to give Asher another chance, and I wasn't very happy about that.
Hollie continues to chase her dream, and in September, she begins work in her local salon. Her boss is Marina Hodgins.
She was very cheerful, she was very fun-loving, she loved being part of the team and she loved all the girls. I just remember just having her around. Obviously, she did fantastic hairdressing.
Hollie's personality was always very bright and she was a very vibrant person. I don't think there was a day that went past where we wouldn't have a serious giggle about one thing or another. We would quite often share funny pictures and videos on Facebook and tag each other in them and then have a good old laugh about it the following day. I would definitely say Hollie was somebody who was very fun-loving.
Everyone loved her. She was very confident. She would go and introduce herself to the clients, and that was just such a positive thing to do from a young lady.
Hollie was proud to be a hairdresser. She did a really good job of it. She always had people coming wanting to see her by name, and she just had a real flair for it.
Hollie may seem happy on the outside, but this hides her growing concern about Maslin. He's escalating his control as every day passes, and his lack of respect for her family is now intense.
He would turn up drunk and very loud, and Asher would be quite abusive, but it was always when Asher was drunk, so we had to just get him in the house so he wouldn't cause a scene.
Hollie used to tell us quite often if she went out with her friends at night, he would suddenly turn up at the end, sometimes being a little bit abusive to other people, sometimes drunk, but always turning up where she was. So she couldn't really go out on her own with her friends without him being there at some stage.
We know that when Asher drinks, he gets angry. We know that he's more likely to be violent and abusive after he's had alcohol. A lot of people with inherent issues, when they lose their inhibitions because of alcohol, will demonstrate their true nature. And Asher's true nature is a violent, aggressive, and abusive one.
Finally, Hollie can't take it anymore. She realises her family were right all along. She needs to finish with Maslin.
The change I noticed in Hollie probably was she wasn't quite as relaxed and herself in the salon. So obviously we knew that she was a little troubled.
And there were a number of times when I talked to Hollie about the relationship and said, look, if you want me to get involved with the relationship, if you want me to talk to him, tell him, let me know. But she said, no, Dad, I will handle it. I'll do it my way. I'll try and do it amicably, so I'll let you know when I need your help.
Hollie calls Maslin and tells him she wants to end their relationship.
And Asher told her that if she did, he would commit suicide and it would all be Hollie's fault.
We know that Asher actually decides to play an emotional blackmail card. He tells Hollie, if you end this relationship, I will kill myself. Put yourself in Hollie's position. She is a young woman with a wonderful family who feels really compelled to look after his feelings. This has been somebody that she has cared for and who has cared for her. threatening to kill himself will have scared her and will potentially have made her keep in contact with him because she's wanted to make sure that she can protect him.
You don't threaten suicide on someone just to kind of bribe them to stay in a relationship.
Asher continues to harass Hollie with texts and calls. Finally, on Valentine's Day 2014, she tries to get through to him in person.
She agreed to meet him at a local eatery. She had a quick bite to eat with him. She tried to tell him. They then went to a pub. He then threw a glass of water in her face, obviously, because he couldn't get through to her.
When Hollie breaks up with Asher in the pub, his reaction is to throw water in her face. Now, this is really interesting because it shows that he doesn't care about other people seeing his inappropriate behaviour. He wants to humiliate her, and his aggression is such that he cannot control his behaviour.
Then he followed her back to the car, got into the car. He said, "Can I use your phone to make a call, someone to pick me up?" She said yes. At that stage, he stole a bank card and he went and emptied her bank account.
Hollie is terrified. The family feel they have no option but to call the police.
The police came round on Saturday night, and Mandy, myself and Hollie, we sat in the room with them, and she told them all about it, and there were a number of things which she said there and then which we were not aware of, you know, particularly around some of the abuse that she'd been getting from him.
When the police were here, he was sending some text messages, so the police will be able to witness what was said, and threats on my dad, threats on us as a family, and threats on the house.
Asher is out of control. He's threatening Hollie and her family. Everyone is on tenterhooks.
Those texts just say what type of individual he was, in the sense of, you know, he couldn't take rejection, and as a result of that, he had to sort of try and inflict physical violence on someone so young, someone so innocent and so vulnerable as Hollie.
From the Sunday evening, after she'd given her statement, I was petrified for her. I didn't sleep. I was constantly calling her, ringing her, making sure she was okay, and texting her. I didn't ever want her to be on her own.
Asher finds out that Hollie's been to the police, and this infuriates him. She is finally taking back control and giving him a direct message. She will not be bullied into a relationship with him. And finally, he starts to understand that Hollie is taking the control back.
Hollie's relationship with Maslin is finally over, and she has a family around her. But losing control of Hollie would tip Maslin over the edge, and they are powerless over what he would do next.
I've been a police officer for 21 years, and it is the worst scene that I've been to.
He looked at my mum and said, got some really bad news.
In February 2014, 20-year-old Hollie Gazzard has finally ended her abusive relationship with Asher Maslin. But Maslin is controlling and possessive. He's threatened her and her family, and now the police are involved.
He now is completely out of control with the relationship, and he realises that Hollie is entirely serious about breaking up with him. And it's at this point he makes the decision to take back control in the ultimate way.
On the Monday, she had a couple of texts from him, but she ignored them. But she didn't hear a lot from him. He went quiet, and she was very, very happy on the Monday. And she came home and we sat down and we had a meal together, which was really nice.
I saw Hollie on the Monday. She came to my house just for kind of an hour's chill. She seemed quite herself. It was nice. She gave me a hug, told me she loved me.
3 days after calling the police, Hollie heads into town before starting her shift at the salon.
So I called her at 10:20. She was just on her way to have her nails done. She said, "Dad, I'm having my nails done. I'll be okay, no problem. Nothing's happened. I'll see you tonight and I love you."
After lunch, Hollie starts work. Alongside her is Sian.
Every single person who worked that day had asked Hollie if she was worried or if she was frightened. And Hollie, being the ballsy little firecracker that she was, if she was frightened, she never let on.
But what Hollie doesn't know is that Maslin is just a few streets away, and he's plotting murder. His actions are captured on CCTV.
So this is Asher Maslin now entering cash converters, and he's got a bag there with a DVD player in it, which is what he wants to try and get some money for. This is him walking into Wilkinson's. He knows exactly where he's going, exactly what he's got to buy. He's not worried about people seeing him. He's got his hood down, he's quite calm, collected. He knows exactly what he's going to do. He's then captured a number of times just down the high street, walking along again. Nothing that stands out about him. He just blends in with everybody else. But the difference is he's now on a mission.
Hollie, meanwhile, is totally unaware that her ex-boyfriend is just moments away, and there's only one thing on his mind.
This is all really important footage for the police because it shows the premeditation, the pre-offence behaviour. Even the weapon of choice is an interesting one. He buys a brand new knife, you know, in terms of the blood and in terms of that real closeness in terms of that person, him taking revenge on her. You know, he wants to be up close and personal, and he wants to take that anger about the rejection out on her. You know, how dare she reject him? And with stalkers, this is something we have to be very careful of.
Just after 6:15, Maslin marches into the salon. He storms over to the counter and punches Hollie in the face.
The clients who were here that evening had said that Hollie had been attacked, and one of the clients had said that they thought they had seen a knife.
Maslin then stabs her 14 times. Horrified customers look on, powerless.
Asher is willing to murder his ex-girlfriend publicly. He doesn't care who can see. He knows that there'll be consequences to his actions, but that doesn't matter. All that matters is the woman who dared to say no to him dies, and he executes her publicly.
Maslin runs off. Hollie lays bleeding on the floor. Despite frantic efforts by paramedics, she dies nearly 2 hours later from massive blood loss. Angela Middlewood is a senior officer on duty and first on the scene.
I've been a police officer for 21 years, and it is the worst scene that I've been to. When we arrived, there was obviously Hollie had been stabbed, so there was a lot of blood in the area where she'd been attacked. So it was quite a shocking scene.
Forensic officers search the salon for evidence. Meanwhile, Hollie's father is unaware of what has happened.
The Tuesday was like any other day at work. It was busy. I had to go and pick up a ring for Chloe in Bristol. We were invited around Chloe's for tea because we were going to pick Hollie up from the salon later on in the evening, as we normally did on a Tuesday evening. I'd forgotten to take the ring, so at about 6:30 I went back to the house to pick up the ring, and just as I was leaving the house, 2 policemen came down the drive, asked if I was Nick Gazzard. I said yes. He said, "Would you mind coming inside?" They said, "I've got some bad news for you. Is your daughter Hollie Gazzard?" I said yes. She said, "I'm very sorry, but there's been an altercation and she's been killed." Those words, I think, are the worst that a father could hear. Your daughter has been killed. It was just devastating, absolutely devastating. The thought that was going through my mind was, how am I going to tell Mandy and Chloe that Hollie had been killed? That was the only thought that was going through my mind. Something that a father should never have to do.
You cannot imagine as a parent knowing that your child is dead, but knowing that the way they died was so brutal and so unfair and so unnecessary is something that can literally disintegrate your entire world.
I thought he'd been a while. I was a bit concerned, and he came back through the door, and he was completely white, and he tried to usher me into the living room where my daughter was and my mum. And he looked at my mum and said, "Got some really bad news. Hollie's been stabbed and she's died." And my mum kind of fell into the sofa and was crying, and I just felt completely numb, as if it hadn't have happened.
At the salon, Angela Middlewood continues her investigation.
At that time, I say, it was just before 6 o'clock in the evening, so we had a lot of people coming out from work, and people. It's a main thoroughfare through Gloucester. As I say, the Gloucester has got the 4 main streets through the centre, and so this was a main thoroughfare, so there was an awful lot of people around at that time.
According to criminal behaviour analyst Laura Richards, this very public murder scene could pose difficulties for the investigation.
There's a real challenge for the police because obviously it's a open and accessible crime scene in the sense that many people can just walk into it, but also other people have been in there. So in terms of forensics and things, in terms of gathering evidence, it becomes a challenge. And they obviously need to understand who did this in the quickest time possible, because he could also present a public protection risk too.
Words can't describe what it was like in here. It was just very upsetting. You know, it looked like, obviously, it'd been a terrible experience for everybody, and I was devastated that someone so lovely had had this happen to her.
A vibrant girl has had her life taken, doing the job she loved, and her family would face more heartache seeing her for the final time.
Probably the second worst thing I've had to do in my life, apart from tell Mandy and Chloe that she was dead, was to see her led on that slab, very small, very, very petite, in a white gown. My baby just led there. That was really upsetting, really upsetting.
For her body to take such trauma, all I saw was her, and she had some wounds on her face. And I couldn't even bring myself to touch her. We weren't allowed to pick her up. We could only hold her hand and kiss her once. And I held my mum's hand over her hand. But she was ice cold and she hated being cold. She looked like a child. She looked like a child asleep. And we knew it was her, but it didn't look like Hollie. It didn't look like her at all.
Asher Maslin has destroyed a loving, close-knit family. They gave him a chance, but all their fears about him have come true. The prime concern now is to find Maslin, but he's vanished.
We needed to find out where Asher Maslin was. So that became our prime target, if you like, to find out where he was. We obviously had someone at large, potentially with a knife, so that was another concern of ours.
A killer is on the run, and this is a killer who's already threatened Hollie's family.
The police said that he was still at large, he was still dangerous, and therefore they wanted us to go to a safe house. So we arranged to go to Mandy's mum's at that stage, and Chloe went to her partner's mum's, and they come back to the house. We picked up some baggage and the dog, and then we were put in a car and we had an armed escort out of the village.
No one knows where Maslin is or what he'll do next.
It's all about the manhunt now. What would be uppermost in the police's mind, is he a risk to anybody else?
It's vital he's caught before more lives are lost. Gloucester, February the 18th, 2014. A cold-blooded killer is on the run. Asher Maslin has stabbed his ex-girlfriend 14 times, a callous punishment for breaking up with him. CCTV footage shows Maslin buying a knife and approaching the salon where he killed 20-year-old Hollie Gazzard before running off. No one knows where Maslin is, so Hollie's family are put into police protection.
It's all about the manhunt now, trying to find him. So having those cameras seeing him running away from the salon and then picking him up on these cameras, the fact that he's changed his clothes, so he's not standing out, he's not covered in blood. Where are those clothes? They need to be able to find them, they need to do the forensics on them, they need to find the weapon. But most of all, they need to find him. One of the key things that will be going through the police's mind is who else might be at risk. When you have a situation where somebody is stalking another, that fixation and that obsession could actually mean that somebody else who's been trying to protect the victim, that violence and abuse could spill over to them. So it could have been that he was on his way to see the family, particularly as Dad played a key part and he was trying to get a restraining order. So what would be uppermost in the police's mind, is he a risk to anybody else?
Maslin is spotted getting into a taxi and heading out of the city. Officers track down the driver, and after an 8-hour manhunt, he's found at a friend's flat.
He showed no remorse throughout that time and made no comments to questions when he was asked. He was no more cooperative when it got to the actual questioning of him.
Psychologist Emma Kenny believes Maslin's silence speaks volumes.
He doesn't care about the police. He doesn't care about rules. All he cares about is getting what he wants from the situation. He's got away as far as he's concerned with what he wanted. He wanted to kill Hollie. He succeeded. Game over.
On July the 16th, 2014, Asher Maslin is sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Hollie Gazzard. The judge describes it as a merciless killing.
He is a murderer, and that's what he is. And he will pay for what he's done.
And Maslin shows no remorse throughout the proceedings.
He doesn't care about what people think about him. He feels like he can control any situation, and he wants the world to know he doesn't care. He doesn't care that he murdered Hollie. All he cares about is he got his own way.
I'll never forgive him for what he's done. I welcomed him into my home. He's played with my daughter. And now my daughter asks where Asher and Auntie Hollie is. And I have to tell her that she'll never see her Auntie Hollie again.
I believe I failed as a father by not protecting her. What I could have done, I don't know. Because she was such a strong individual, and I did ask her whether she wanted to be involved, and I said that I would go and talk to him and try and see reasoning or try and help her. But as a father, the one time when your daughter needed you, I wasn't there. So you do feel as if you've actually failed as a father, and that's the way I feel sometimes.
Hollie's funeral is held on the 17th of March 2014, a month after she was killed. Hundreds of mourners attend.
The day of the funeral, we held it at Gloucester Cathedral because it was the only place big enough, because of the outpouring of messages that we had from the Gloucester community. We were advised by the police that we needed to have it there because there were probably going to be 900 to 1,000 people attended, which is what happened.
One of the worst things I'll ever have to do. But at her funeral, we wanted it to be colourful and vibrant, which it was, and everyone made a huge effort to make sure that was possible. But seeing her coffin was the hardest thing for me to do, knowing that she's in there.
We had 6 pallbearers to carry it, but because she was so small, we had to put that down to 4. It was not big enough to have 6. 4 of her friends carried a coffin in. And all we could do at that stage was to focus on Hollie, focus on the coffin, because that was what was going to get us through.
Hollie would have been very proud of what we did, I think, and it was a lovely day, but it shouldn't have had to happen.
Six months later, Hollie's family are still struggling to move on, desperate that she'll never be forgotten.
This is Hollie's bedroom. This is exactly how she had it, apart from the picture on the wall there. This is her favourite saying, which she had on her Facebook site. A couple of other things which are sentimental here. This is her leavers jersey when she left school. Obviously her name was Ginge because of her hair colour. And this teddy here is the one that I bought her when she was born. So this was bought on the day she was born. So that's got great sentimental value as well. The two clocks, the one by her bed and the one on her wall, both are set at 6:51, which was the time that Hollie passed away.
Hollie's father was always her protector. From day one, when they had to go out and buy clothes that were small enough to fit her, to the moment that she died, he was always there for her. And it's impossible to imagine what it's like knowing that he will live the rest of his life without seeing her face again.
The way that I certainly coped after it all happened was I didn't want Hollie's name just to be forgotten. Because of the way that she was, how popular she was, I wanted to make something of her. And that's one of the reasons why we set up the Hollie Gazzard Trust.
Hollie's life was taken far too soon. So we wanted to set something up in her name to keep her memory alive, keep her legacy going, and do something that she would have done. And she would have loved what we're doing. It would have been at her heart.
With the trust, she will be even a bigger part of the family now going forward, because we want to celebrate her life by helping others. Hopefully we can make a positive out of this negative, and we can do a lot of good for other people, both in terms of education, get them through their hairdressing exams, and also hopefully preventing people going through domestic abuse as well. Hollie going has left a massive hole in our hearts, in the family, but she will always be a part of the family.
He's taken my sister, my best friend, the only person that I knew would be there for me from when we were children to when we grew older, because we're sisters. He's taken the life from our family, and there's a big hole missing now.
We'd like Hollie remembered as a young, vibrant, vivacious, fun-loving individual who, when she walked into the room, lit up the room and had friends all over the place. And she made people smile.